Hey everybody, this is Electra. This is my second video on my new channel. Thank you for watching. I am a 44-year-old male to female transgender transitioning, recently started and recently diagnosed autistic with major depression, anxiety, and possible bipolar 2. And welcome to my channel. It is Saturday, January 11th, 2025, 34 degrees outside, air temperature in St. Louis. It's a beautiful day for January. Snowy yesterday, but this is about as good as it gets in January for St. Louis. Really nice, cool, but one thing I've learned since living in the Midwest is that temperature doesn't really mean anything anymore. It's more about like the sky cover, sky condition, atmospheric condition, the feel of the air, the wind, the humidity level, and not so much the temperature. Like to me, 34 and sunny in January is not that cold. Like it feels okay. It's like, I guess you just have to get adjusted to a colder climate. But like I remember, I've lived most of my life in warmer climates in the South or Southern California, and living in, growing up in Texas, it's not tropical by any means. It's still pretty cold in the winter, but in Florida, where I went to college from 98 to 2001, yeah, it's in the South, you obsess over temperature and sort of humidity, but it's mostly just temperature. It's not, I don't know what it is, but it's like in the South, it's all about, oh, is it warm or cold? It's like here, you think that too, but it's also like, well, is it windy? Does it feel nasty outside, or is it a nice kind of dry, lower humidity day? Even though it's cool, it's gonna feel nice and refreshing. Anyway, not sure why we got into that, but yeah, it's kind of nice. Let me see if I can go back. There we go. It's kind of a nice, I'm a little dark, I guess, but yeah, as you know, with all the California, Los Angeles wildfires going on, which are crazy, this is definitely the worst I've ever seen. I used to live in Los Angeles quite a bit, for quite a few years in my 20s and very early 30s. And sometimes I think, like, if I was on a different timeline or somehow just in a different life, if I was more financially successful and was able to just stay out there and live the life I thought I wanted at the time, like I easily could, like own a house or at least live in an apartment in those areas. Like those were really nice areas of the west side of Los Angeles, which is definitely like the more, definitely the nicer part of the city. It's just, well, it's the rich part of the city. It's more upscale. Pacific Palisades, if I had to compare it to like a St. Louis area city, I would call it like, it's kind of like a Ladue, except it's on the ocean. So it's like picture Ladue on the ocean between Santa Monica and Malibu. And this whole city like basically doesn't look like it exists anymore. And it's just like weird to think, like yesterday I'm talking about decisions you make, decisions you don't make, regretting one or the other. And that could have been a decision I made that seemed like a dream come true at the time. Like, oh, like let's say I just like somehow struck gold in California, so to speak, and just had this great high-paying job, and I would have been like, oh yeah, well, why not look at a house in Pacific Palisades? And this could have been in like 2006, 7, 8, or as recently as 2011. Yeah, and it's just like it's one of those decisions where it's like, okay, in another timeline, like I could be one of those people right now. And I'm not sure like how many people think like this. It doesn't seem like very many. People don't realize how everything is connected and how like if just a few different things happened in life, like we could have been in almost any situation. And I think this about a lot of like bad things that happen where, it's just if one little thing happened differently, we might not be here, or we would be here, but in a completely different way, and our lives as we know it now like wouldn't exist. And yeah, so last night on YouTube, I was watching some really intense videos of fires, and like they were from the perspective of inside the house, from like a camera, kind of like a ring camera, but inside the house, of what it would look like when your house gets destroyed by a wildfire. And it was just on a whole other level. Like you think, like wildfires, we hear about it like every year California has wildfires, we all know that. And it's like we all have this abstract idea in our head of what a wildfire is because we hear it on the news. But do we really know anything about it? Like what it actually is and what it actually would look like when you're right there. And if you want to know what a wildfire really is, like watch a video on YouTube of a house catching fire from a wildfire from the perspective of inside the home, as if you were actually there. And it's terrifying. It's just, and to think that this has happened to hundreds, if not thousands of homes at this point, that's what hits home. I feel like in a lot of ways in this world, we're like just desensitized to the realities of things. And I know like not everybody wants to see disturbing things. And honestly, I probably shouldn't be, considering my mental state. But I know it's also I'm also just kind of morbidly interested in these things. And somebody's got to watch them. Like they're definitely not for everybody, but I feel like if anything's going to improve, we have to know what it actually is like. And just hearing the word wildfire on TV or on the news is like, it's an abstraction. It's just language. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a man-made sound that we make with our skin, our throat tissue, and and we think we hear those noise, we hear the sounds that make the word wildfire, and that's supposed to make us think we know everything about it. Because it's just like a reflex, like, oh, wildfires, oh, they're in California, it happens every year, no big deal. That's like probably 99% of this country's reaction right now, especially since most people hate California to begin with, and which is unfortunate. I think that's just a sign of how, screwed up politically we are. But yeah, so I used to hate the fact I wasn't living in California anymore, and I wanted to go back so much that I was really just obsessed with it. Like I was obsessed with places from a young age, and I'm wondering if that's kind of an autistic thing, to be obsessed with places. Like the first place I can recall being really kind of obsessed with was New York City when I was like probably about 4 or 5 years old. Like I still have like a lot of these books my mom bought for me at bookstores, because I just love to look at pictures of New York City. So I still have like 3 or 4 of these really nice books from like the early 80s of like professionally taken photos of New York City, people in New York City, just what life was like back then. And that's something that just doesn't exist anymore. We can find a million photos on the internet, but 99% of them like aren't going to be interesting because they're just amateurs that take them. And these professionally made photo books of cities don't exist really anymore. And so New York City was my first obsession. I loved it. I don't know why. I was born in New York, but pretty much as far from New York City as it could be. I was practically born in Canada, near Niagara Falls, in Lewiston, New York. So I don't know, that I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but I think it was the movie Ghostbusters. That, funnily enough, that and Muppets Take Manhattan. I was like obsessed with those movies too, and I think since they were in New York City, that made me also interested in New York City. But I never ended up living there. I've only visited it once in my life in 1999 when I was 19. And don't have a whole lot of desire to ever go back, but I just don't like travel. I just don't have any desire to travel in general. I'm sure if I did want to travel, that would probably be on the list, but so New York City was my first kind of obsession. And then I would say probably in my late teens when I was in college in Florida, I just was interested in California. We did visit it a few times when I was younger. I liked it. I seemed to like it then. Well, actually, no, it started around then because I remember like when I was around 12, when we went to LA, it was actually on my 13th birthday. We were walking around Hollywood and there was like this souvenir store and they sold these maps that were awesome. And I still have this map to this day. It came out in the early 90s. It was like hand drawn it was like colorful and all hand-drawn art, painted, and they had a whole series of these, like for every city. Every major city had one of these maps. So I remember seeing the one for Los Angeles. It was Greater Los Angeles, and I got it as a souvenir. And I would study this map like intensively. I would just sit in my room and study this map. I just like was drawn to LA and I was obsessed with it. I wanted to know where everything was. I wanted to know the freeway system by heart. And I did. Like I learned this freeway system before I could even drive a car. I remember going there. Oh no, I remember giving my parents directions to like try to find one of the freeways. So I had to have known it pretty well. That's right, because we got that map in November 1990. We first went to Palm Springs for my dad to play in a golf tournament, and then we drove to LA, like 2 hours away, and that's when I got that hand-drawn map. So then from 1990 until 1993, I studied this map a lot, but we went for our second time there in 1993. After a short trip to Las Vegas, we drove to LA, and that's when I knew the freeway so well. I remember giving my dad directions in the rental car to get to, I don't know, it was probably either the 405 or the 10, and I was right. Like I was 13 and I knew these things like by heart. So, so it always had a place in my heart, and I knew I wanted to live there, and that was rekindled when I was like 19 or 20. I took a short trip to LA when I was interning at an airline, and I could fly for free, and flew in the jump seat of I don't know, probably, well, I won't get into those details, but I rented a car. Even though I was only 20 years old, I found some company that would rent to me. And I just like loved driving around. Like, yeah, I didn't even like care that the traffic was bad. Or I remember going there, it was November, and it was pretty cool. To me, it felt cool at the time, mainly because I was like, used to Florida weather at that time. And I think living in Florida, like oddly enough, increased my desire to live in California, because I think from like a Florida perspective, to me, California was like this idealized version of Florida where it had much better weather. It wasn't as hot. It had way less humidity. It wasn't in the South. People seemed like cosmopolitan, more my speed, fairly intelligent type people. Not that Florida isn't that way, but some parts are. And the part I went to college was definitely more along those lines. And yeah, so anyway. I don't have any real point to this other than just talking and telling a story with no end, I guess. But I ended up living in LA, and it didn't work out, and it was hard for me to accept for a long time. But I think things overall have worked out, and that's something else about life, is that you can go for years thinking something didn't work out to your favor. And it still takes a psychological toll, even though it might turn out to be for the best. You don't know that at the time. That's just the human condition. But now looking at it, like, I guess I'm glad I'm not there. I'm glad when I left, and that's all you can really do or ask for. And well, yeah, so I think that's all I really want to talk about for now. And please like, subscribe, comment if you like. Please be nice. Nice comments only, please. And thank you again, and I will see you soon. Bye.